The blinding lights of the product launch, the roar of the crowd, then nothing. I woke to a dull ache and the stench of mildew, my multi-billion-dollar empire replaced by a crumbling ceiling. This wasn't my penthouse. This wasn't 2030. Every fiber of my being screamed that I was a titan of industry, yet my hands were rough, my clothes threadbare, and my stomach empty. The world outside was a cacophony of unfamiliar sounds and outdated technology. A bus rumbled past, its exhaust fumes a stark reminder of 2008's primitive air quality. Knock, only one person ever bothered. Daniel Chen, my childhood friend, peered in, his usual cheerful demeanor clouded with concern as he saw my state. Daniel's voice, a familiar anchor, felt distant. My mind was a whirlwind of 2030 schematics and market projections, clashing violently with the stark reality of 2008. Sudden, painful jolt. Images flashed, a sleek touchscreen device, a viral social media platform, a stock ticker. My future memories, raw and overwhelming, began to surface. Daniel tried to make conversation, but I could barely hear him over the mental noise. How could I explain a future that hadn't happened, with technology that didn't exist yet? Later alone, I grabbed a dusty newspaper. My future self had devoured financial news. Could I recall even a single minor market shift to confirm this impossible gift? My eyes found a small article about a regional electronics company. A faint memory sparked, a brief, unexpected spike in their stock weeks from now. It was insignificant but concrete. Confirmation was one thing, capitalization another. I had zero money, zero connections, and a lifetime of future knowledge trapped in an 18-year-old body. The path ahead felt impossibly steep. But despair wasn't an option. The empire I lost, the future I remembered, it called to me. I had to start somewhere, even if it was with a tiny, forgotten stock tip. Memory solidified. A minor surge in global innovation stock 4 weeks from now. It wasn't much, but it was a start. My first step towards rebuilding everything. My ambition burned, but my pockets were empty. I needed capital, even a tiny spark, to ignite the future I remembered. Every worn item held a potential price. After pawning the watch and adding every spare coin, I had just enough. It was a paltry sum, but in 2008, it was a lifeline. My future depended on this archaic machine. I navigated the slow internet, searching for the stock. My memory was crystal clear, a small, overlooked energy company poised for an unexpected surge. The future's whisper was my only guide. The clunky interface, the agonizing load times, it was a digital dinosaur compared to 2030. Every click felt like a gamble, every delay a test of my resolve. A knock startled me. Daniel. His concern was a familiar weight, a reminder of the life I'd left behind and the one I was trying to build. "Ethan, you look like you haven't slept in days," Daniel said, his voice laced with worry. "What's going on? You're obsessed with that old thing." "Just a feeling, Daniel," I replied, trying to sound casual. "A really strong feeling about this stock. It's going to jump." Daniel just shook his head, clearly unconvinced. With Daniel watching, a mix of concern and disbelief on his face, I clicked confirm. My entire meager fortune, gone in an instant or multiplied, the future was now in motion. The next morning, the apartment felt impossibly quiet. Every tick of the old wall clock echoed the frantic beat of my heart. This was it. Logging back in, my hands were clammy. Then I saw it. The numbers screamed success. Daniel, who had been peering over my shoulder, gasped. "No way, it worked?" Daniel stammered, his eyes wide. My foresight was real. The first step was taken. My small fortune was a start, but a mere drop in the ocean. To build the future, I needed more than just money. I needed specific components, the building blocks of tomorrow, starting with a forgotten, specialized microcontroller. My small bank account was a stark reminder of how far I had fallen. $750, all I had to build a multi-billion-dollar empire from scratch. It was barely enough to begin. First, the components. My future knowledge was a blueprint, but I needed raw materials from this era. The local electronics market was my only option, a maze of forgotten tech. I sifted through mountains of obsolete parts, each piece a compromise. The vendor's eyes followed me, probably wondering why a kid was buying ancient microprocessors and salvaged circuit boards. Back in my apartment, the true challenge began. Adapting 2030 network architecture to these primitive 2008 components was like trying to build a supercar with bicycle parts. Hours blurred into days. My initial designs were too complex, requiring advanced fabrication. I had to simplify to distill the essence of future connectivity into something achievable now. My first prototype was taking shape, but I couldn't build an empire alone. I needed a software engineer, someone with raw talent and a mind for innovation. I knew just the person, Sarah Jenkins. Sarah Jenkins, a brilliant but overlooked software engineer, was still years away from her breakthrough in my original timeline. Now, she was my first crucial target. I found her university profile online. My email was direct, probably too direct for 2008. I spoke of disruptive technology, future trends, and a vision no one else could comprehend. I knew she'd be intrigued eventually. The first reply was terse. Thank you for your interest, but I'm not looking for freelance projects. Then a second, even colder after I tried to elaborate. She thought I was a scammer or worse, delusional. Daniel, my childhood friend, found me still hunched over my laptop days later. He just shook his head. Ethan, you're scaring people with this future tech talk. Maybe start smaller. Smaller wasn't an option. My memory of Sarah was too clear, her importance too vital. Email clearly wasn't enough. I needed to show her, not just tell her. I needed a direct demonstration. The university was hosting a tech fair next week, a perfect stage. I packed my crude prototype, ready to confront her skepticism head-on, no matter what it took. The Tech Innovation Fair buzzed with hopeful chatter, but for me it was a crucible. I had to find Sarah and I had to convince her. My future depended on it. I scanned the faces, 100 different projects vying for attention. But only one mattered. My eyes cut through the noise, searching for the brilliant, skeptical mind I needed. And I saw her, Sarah Jenkins. She was presenting a data visualization tool, elegant but overlooked, to a small, distracted group. Daniel stood nearby, watching me instead of the presentation. I walked up, remembering her dismissive emails. She stiffened as I approached, her expression a mix of recognition and mild irritation. This wouldn't be easy. Your predictive algorithms are strong, I started, but your data sources are too narrow. You're missing the social media sentiment shift that happens asterisk before the market reacts. Her eyes widened. I knew what she didn't. How would you know that? She asked, a flicker of genuine curiosity cutting through her skepticism. It was a small opening, but it was enough. I had her attention. I pulled out my worn sketchbook. Imagine a device that personalizes digital content, not just for convenience, but for genuine human connection. It anticipates needs, learns desires, and reshapes interaction. From the edge of the crowd, Daniel watched, a strange new intensity on my face. He'd never seen me like this, not since we were kids. This wasn't the Ethan he knew. Sarah closed the sketchbook, her gaze sharp. It's a grand vision, but paper isn't code and concepts aren't products. Prove it. Give me a working demo, a basic prototype in 2 weeks. 2 weeks, with my current resources, it was borderline impossible, but this was my chance. I met her gaze, a silent promise passing between us. You'll have it. She gave me her contact info, a curt nod, and then turned back to her booth. The fair's noise returned, but now it sounded different, a clock ticking. Ethan, Daniel said, stepping closer, a new respect in his voice. You really think you can pull this off? I just looked at my sketchbook, the weight of a future empire resting on these next 2 weeks. I have to. My small apartment had transformed into a chaotic workshop, a war zone of wires and ambition, as we raced against an impossible deadline. Sarah, my first and best hire, translated my 2030 designs into 2008's frustrating reality, her fingers flying across the keyboard with intense focus. Daniel, initially skeptical, now scoured junkyards for discarded components, his resourcefulness proving invaluable in our desperate hunt for parts. I moved between them, a conductor of chaos, my future knowledge guiding every compromise, every modification, pushing the limits of 2008 technology. Meanwhile, in a world far removed from our cramped reality, Marcus Thorne, CEO of Nexus Innovations, dismissed the very idea of disruptive startups. He sat in his opulent office, a king on his throne, confident that true innovation could only come from established giants like his own company. Back in our world, the prototype was finally ready. A collective breath held, we initiated the power sequence, hoping for a miracle. A hopeful hum, then a sickening pop and a flash of acrid smoke. The critical component I'd scavenged from an old router had failed. Spare settled in, heavy and cold. The deadline was minutes away, and our prototype lay dead, a monument to our impossible ambition. Then a flicker, a forgotten memory of a 2020 patent, a risky, unconventional workaround for a similar power regulation issue. We still had a chance. With mere minutes remaining, we frantically rewired, stripped, and resoldered, a desperate, synchronized dance against the relentless ticking of the clock. Then a soft, steady glow. The prototype pulsed to life, its network indicator shining bright, a beacon from the future, finally here in 2008. The hum of the Regional Tech Expo was a stark contrast to our quiet apartment. Sarah and I, just two unknowns, were about to unveil something years ahead of its time. Our booth was small, almost an afterthought, but our prototype sat ready. Daniel, ever the loyal friend, gave us a reassuring nod, his presence a quiet anchor. I took a deep breath, the future of our small venture resting on my words. The few faces gathered seemed polite but skeptical, typical for a regional expo. Then Sarah's hands flew over the controls, bringing the crude device to life. The screen flickered, then displayed a real-time network map. It wasn't magic, it was applied knowledge. A few murmurs rippled through the small crowd. A tech blogger, notebook in hand, leaned closer, eyes wide. It was working. They saw a glimpse of the future. From the edge of the crowd, a woman watched, her gaze piercing. Grace Sterling, an influential venture capitalist, observed our small presentation, her expression unreadable. Remarkable, the tech blogger exclaimed, snapping photos. This changes everything for small-scale networking. His enthusiasm was a much-needed boost. Meanwhile, Thorne's junior analyst scoffed. A child's toy. My company produces real solutions, not glorified routers. His words stung, a reminder of the giants we faced. It's a start, Sarah said, sensing my frustration. They see the potential, Ethan. That's enough for now. Her quiet resolve steadied me. Just as we began to pack up, a shadow fell over our booth. Grace Sterling approached, her movements fluid and purposeful, a predator scenting opportunity. Ethan Vance, isn't it? She purred, her voice smooth. She extended a business card. I admire disruptive talent. Let's talk about supporting yours. Her card felt heavy in my hand. Sterling Capital, her words echoed. Support disruptive talent. But her gaze, it held a depth that made me both hopeful and deeply wary. The expo hall emptied, leaving Sarah and me amidst the lingering scent of stale coffee. Grace Sterling's offer echoed in my mind, a lifeline I desperately needed, despite the unease it brought. My future knowledge was a blueprint, but blueprints needed capital. Grace's offer was substantial, enough to jumpstart everything. Could I afford to ignore such an opportunity, even with a nagging suspicion? Across town, in an office far removed from my struggles, Grace Sterling smiled, a predatory gleam in her eyes. He's precisely what we've been looking for, she mused, adjusting her perfect cufflink. Meanwhile, Marcus Thorne's junior analyst presented his report, a flicker of excitement in his voice. It's a novel approach, sir, a new networking protocol. Early buzz is strong. Thorne merely scoffed, waving a dismissive hand. Another flash in the pan, but monitor it. I want to know if this novelty actually moves any needles. At a dingy coffee shop, Sarah's brow furrowed. Her offer is almost too good, Ethan. A venture capitalist of her caliber for us. It feels unearned. Be careful. I clenched my jaw. I understand your caution, Sarah, but we have nothing. This isn't just an investment. It's our only way to build what needs to be built. We have to take the risk. The decision was made. I signed the documents, the weight of the pen feeling heavier than any circuit board. This wasn't just money. It was a gamble on a future I alone could see. With the funding secured, Nexus Innovations was born. Daniel, Sarah, and I raised cheap plastic cups, a silent toast to the impossible dream finally taking its first breath. From a cramped apartment to this, a small but real office. It was a tangible step, a base from which Nexus Innovations would grow, one future tech blueprint at a time. Sitting at my new desk, the hum of the computer felt like a symphony. Yet a shadow lingered, Grace Sterling's too-perfect smile. I knew the future, but some futures were still unwritten. Flickering news report caught my eye. Thorne Corp announces groundbreaking OmniConnect initiative, promising to revolutionize global communication. I knew that name. I knew its fate. The news anchor's voice cut through the quiet office, announcing Thorne Corp's unexpected launch of a new, affordable networking device. My stomach dropped. This was exactly the market I'd planned to disrupt. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, his face pale. Sarah's brow furrowed, a grim silence settling over us. Thorne had moved faster, broader, and with more resources than I could have imagined. My future memories had shown Thorne's dominance, but not this preemptive strike. This wasn't merely competition. It was an attempt to suffocate us before we could even breathe. My carefully laid plans were crumbling. Call from Grace Sterling, her voice calm and reassuring, offered condolences for the unexpected competition. She advised me to pivot towards a niche market, away from direct confrontation, a path that felt oddly controlled. Her words, meant to be supportive, left a strange, metallic taste in my mouth. It felt like she was subtly pushing me down a less impactful road, a path that wouldn't challenge the established order. I spent the night consumed by market data and flickering future memories, searching for an overlooked detail, a weakness in Thorne's seemingly impenetrable strategy. There had to be an opening. Then a flicker of a memory solidified, a future recall about widespread connectivity issues plaguing Thorne's device. A critical, inherent flaw in their hardware. I had it. The game wasn't over. I presented my findings to Sarah and Daniel, outlining a risky pivot. We wouldn't compete directly, but instead develop a rapid, targeted patch that would exploit Thorne's known flaw, turning their strength into their weakness. Sarah pushed back immediately, her ethical compass flaring. This is too aggressive, Ethan. It's not just about winning, it's about building a company with integrity. We can't risk our reputation on a gamble like this. Daniel, usually my unwavering supporter, hesitated. She has a point, Ethan. This feels reckless. What if your intel is wrong? We're putting everything on the line, everything we've built. I looked between their worried faces. My intel isn't wrong, I stated, my voice firm. This is our only chance. Thorne wants to bury us. We either fight back with everything we have or we lose everything. Silence stretched heavy with unspoken doubts, but my decision was made. Thorne's launch was days away. We were going to gamble everything on my future knowledge and pray it was enough. The air in the office was thick with anticipation as we prepared for launch. My team, exhausted but hopeful, looked to me, unaware of the battle we were truly facing. Just hours after our launch, the predictable happened. Thorne's media machine spun to life, drowning our modest announcement in a wave of dismissive reviews and outright mockery. Initial sales data confirmed the public sentiment. We were barely a ripple against Thorne's tsunami. Sarah's face, usually so composed, showed a flicker of real worry. But I remembered. Thorne's product, for all its flash, had a fundamental flaw that would eventually surface. My future memory showed a niche, a growing frustration my product could uniquely address. I quickly outlined the necessary pivot, a shift in focus toward user experience and a specific connectivity feature. Sarah, without question, dove into the code, her fingers flying across the keyboard. While Sarah rewrote our core, Daniel hit the streets. He leveraged his network, spreading word of mouth about our product's unique value, a quiet groundswell against the corporate noise. Meanwhile, Marcus Thorne basked in his perceived victory. He watched the news, a smug smile on his face, convinced he had crushed another upstart before they could even breathe. Elsewhere, Olivia Hayes, a tenacious investigative journalist, began her own digging. Not into us, but into the growing whispers of dissatisfaction surrounding Thorne's latest market-dominant product. Days crawled by, sales remained sluggish, but faint glimmers of hope appeared. A few obscure online reviews began praising the very features we'd adapted, hinting at a niche forming. "This is it," I told them, my voice firm. "The dissatisfaction with Thorne's product is growing. Our solution, simple as it is, perfectly fills that void. We just need to give it time." And suddenly the numbers exploded. Sarah gasped, pointing at the monitor. User reviews praising our unique connectivity poured in like a dam had broken. The market had found us. Across the city, Marcus Thorne received the urgent call. His smug expression dissolved into shock and disbelief as he grappled with the market shift he couldn't possibly comprehend. The news cycle screamed of our unexpected success, and with it, Marcus Thorne's fury. He launched a full-scale smear campaign, his face contorted in rage on every screen as I watched him declare war. Sarah worried about our public image, Daniel cursed Thorne's dirty tactics, but I knew this was coming. Every attack was just fuel for the fire I was about to ignite, thanks to knowledge only I possessed. Thorne's lawyers arrived, their proposal a thinly veiled insult. He offered a pittance, expecting me to fold. "This is a toy, not a company," his lead counsel sneered, utterly underestimating us. I laid out Thorne's history, intellectual property theft, legal loopholes exploited, a pattern of corporate bullying. "We won't just counter his offer," I told Sarah and Daniel. "We'll expose him using his own playbook against him." The next 48 hours were a blur of caffeine and code. Sarah meticulously cross-referenced patents, Daniel unearthed old legal filings, and I drafted the public statement, anticipating every move Thorne might make. The press conference was a circus. Thorne, flanked by his legal team, strutted onto the stage, dismissing our product as a passing novelty. He had no idea the trap he was walking into. When my turn came, I presented irrefutable data. User growth, engagement metrics, and most damningly, the patented technology Thorne Corp had tried to claim as their own for years. A legal battle I knew they'd lost in the future. Murmurs grew. I then revealed a direct side-by-side comparison, highlighting our superior performance and Thorne Corp's outdated architecture. The silence was deafening, then the whispers turned into a roar. The market reacted instantly. Thorne Corp's stock plummeted. The headlines, once dismissive, now condemned him. Marcus Thorne, the Titan, crumbled under the weight of his own arrogance, his empire visibly faltering. Back in our humble office, the air buzzed with triumphant energy. Sarah hugged me, Daniel cheered, and I felt a surge of exhilaration. Our first major victory, earned through knowledge and relentless effort. We had done it. Far away, Grace Sterling watched the news reports of Thorne's downfall. Her perfectly composed smile held no warmth. "Unforeseen variables," she murmured into a secure comms device, her eyes cold and calculating. Later, alone in the quiet of my office, a new notification flashed on my secure server. An anonymous message. A single, cryptic line of code. It wasn't a threat, but a whisper from a past I thought was buried. Victory over Thorne Corp felt good, a weight lifted. But our old cramped office filled with boxes was just a stepping stone to something bigger. The echo of our voices in the empty room was a reminder of how far we'd come, and how much further we still had to go. Our new headquarters stood tall, a gleaming monument to our first hard-won victory. This was where Vance Innovations would truly begin. Stepping into the lobby, I felt a surge of pride. Sarah and Daniel looked around, their faces alight with the sheer potential of this new space. Boxes were quickly unpacked. Sarah was already setting up servers, Daniel organizing desks. This wasn't just an office, it was our future taking shape. From this window, the city stretched out, an endless canvas of possibilities. My future knowledge was a map, but the journey still lay ahead. Grace Sterling arrived, her presence as polished as ever. She congratulated us, her smile warm, yet I sensed a subtle calculation in her eyes. She spoke of strategic guidance, subtly steering my thoughts towards specific market segments. I listened, unaware of the hidden strings she was attempting to pull. Miles away, a journalist named Olivia Hayes scrolled through headlines, Thorne's downfall and my company's rise. The speed of it all struck her as too perfect. She clicked open a new, blank file. Vance Innovations, she typed, a shadow of suspicion forming. The game was far from over. I walked Grace to the elevator, feeling a strange mix of gratitude and unease. Her words lingered, a subtle warning I couldn't yet decipher. Unpredictability of genius, she'd said. I dismissed it as a compliment, unaware that far away, my name was already being scrutinized. Marcus Thorne, still smarting from our last encounter, wasn't one to accept defeat gracefully. His fury would soon become our next challenge. The calm after our launch was short-lived. A stack of legal documents arrived, each one a declaration of war from Thorne Corp, meant to bury us in litigation. Thorne's tactics were predictable, a corporate playbook from decades past. But adapting future legal defense to 2008 statutes required careful precision, a mental chess match. I laid out our counter-strategy, a legal maneuver unheard of in 2008 corporate law. Daniel looked doubtful, but Sarah's keen mind already saw the potential, her eyes gleaming. Meanwhile, Olivia Hayes, tenacious as ever, was digging into Thorne's past. She was discovering his ruthlessness, piece by painstaking piece, a dark history of corporate aggression. Thorne's reach extended beyond the courts. A recruiter, clearly working for him, tried to poach Sarah. Her loyalty, however, was not for sale, her resolve unwavering. I had foreseen Thorne's attempt to lure Sarah away. A preemptive loyalty bonus, carefully structured, secured her commitment without a word, proving her value. In court, Thorne's legal team looked genuinely bewildered. My unconventional strategy, a future precedent made real, had just delivered its first blow, catching them completely off guard. Thorne's face, usually composed, twisted in frustrated anger. He couldn't fathom how we'd outmaneuvered him, but his fury was palpable, a simmering rage. Olivia, connecting the dots, saw a pattern emerging. Thorne's desperation was showing, and my company was clearly the target of his wrath, fueled by a history of aggression. Winning felt good, but the ethical line blurred. Was I becoming as ruthless as Thorne, using foresight as a weapon? The thought gnawed at me, a heavy burden. Thorne cornered me, his voice a low growl. Your past isn't as clean as your future looks, boy, he warned. The game had just turned personal, a chilling promise. Thorne's legal maneuvers were relentless, each document a thinly veiled threat. But buried within the complex filings, my future knowledge highlighted a glaring weakness in their logistics, a vulnerability no one in 2008 would notice. Exploiting it meant disrupting their entire supply chain, crippling them overnight. It was a swift, brutal path to victory, but it would leave a trail of collateral damage, a tactic I knew was ethically murky. I laid out the strategy for Sarah, carefully omitting the full extent of the fallout. Her brow furrowed, her gaze already piercing through my careful words, sensing the underlying ruthlessness. That's not just a competitive edge, Ethan, Sarah said, her voice firm. That's predatory. We don't sacrifice our integrity for a quick win, not when we're building something meant to last. Grace Sterling met me at an upscale restaurant, her smile as polished as her pearls. She spoke of the harsh realities of business, subtly weaving in the idea that some battles required a less conventional approach. Sometimes, she purred, her eyes assessing, to protect what you've built, you must be willing to dismantle what stands in your way. Ruthlessness isn't a flaw, Ethan, it's a tool. Miles away, Olivia Hayes was lost in a sea of corporate reports and leaked emails, the scent of old paper and stale coffee filling her small office. She was close, I knew, to unearthing Thorne's true nature. Then a gasp. A decrypted file revealed a web of corporate espionage and past dirty dealings, a pattern of calculated sabotage that confirmed every suspicion. Thorne wasn't just a competitor, he was a predator. City lights blurred outside my window. Sarah's words echoed, integrity for a quick win. Grace's whispered, ruthlessness is a tool. My future knowledge offered a clear path, but the cost weighed heavily. Next morning, I presented a revised strategy to Sarah. It leveraged Thorne's weakness, yes, but through a series of legal and market maneuvers that were aggressive, yet undeniably ethical. No collateral damage, no moral compromises. Sarah nodded, a flicker of relief in her eyes, but it was quickly replaced by a deeper, unreadable concern. My decision was ethical, but perhaps the sheer scale of my ambition, the sheer speed of my moves, still troubled her. The path forward was clear, but not without its own costs. My choices, while ethical, were still my own. And the quiet tension in Sarah's eyes told me that our journey was far from simple, far from over. Grace Sterling's partnership proposal lay on my desk, a gilded cage I saw all too clearly. She spoke of growth, but my future knowledge screamed trap. I had to find a way out without revealing my hand. Across town, Olivia Hayes meticulously cross-referenced Thorne's shady dealings. A name kept reappearing in peripheral documents, a link to a holding company that didn't quite fit Grace Sterling's polished public image. It was a faint whisper of discord. Grace met me for coffee, her smile radiant, her words silken. She painted a picture of mutual success, making the trap seem like an irresistible opportunity. I feigned consideration, my mind racing for an escape. Back at the office, I laid out Grace's proposal for Sarah and Daniel. It's a strong offer, I admitted, but I sense hidden risks. I needed their honest assessment, hoping their skepticism could be my shield. Livia, fueled by a growing unease, traced Grace Sterling's professional past further. A defunct tech startup, acquired under questionable circumstances, emerged from the digital dust. It didn't align with Grace's carefully curated narrative. I proposed alternative strategies, subtly trying to redirect Grace. She listened patiently, then with a dismissive wave, explained why my ideas were too premature or lacked scalability. Every door I tried to open, she politely shut. My team worked relentlessly, fueled by coffee and desperation. We needed a counterproposal so compelling that even Grace couldn't dismiss it, a loophole in her perfect plan. Hours blurred into a frantic search for leverage. Livia uncovered a ghost in Grace's past, a shell company dissolved years ago with a single common shareholder. That shareholder's name was a chilling echo of a syndicate I knew from my future. The pieces were beginning to connect. Grace's call was short, direct. A press conference tomorrow morning, she announced, to unveil our exciting new partnership. It wasn't an invitation, it was a summons. She was going to make this public, leaving me no room to maneuver. The air in my office felt heavy, suffocating. I paced, my future knowledge screaming the disaster this partnership would become. But without proof, without a plausible reason, I was trapped. Grace had me cornered. The press conference hall buzzed with anticipation. Grace Sterling stood on stage, radiant, a vision of corporate power. I walked in, every step a descent into her snare, forcing my face into a mask of calm I didn't feel. Grace's voice boomed, announcing the unprecedented strategic alliance. She turned to me, a glint in her eyes, inviting my enthusiastic confirmation. Trapped, I forced a smile, nodding as the cameras flashed, my future knowledge screaming betrayal. Strategic partnership with Sterling Global was supposed to bolster Vance Innovations. Instead, it felt like a slow-acting poison, just as my future memories had warned. The initial rollout was plagued with unforeseen, technical glitches. Sarah's sharp mind quickly identified the sabotaging code, but it was too late. The damage was done, the launch of our new service crippled. The press, always hungry for a narrative, quickly picked up the story. The official statement from Sterling Global cited unforeseen compatibility issues, shifting blame and leaving us to weather the storm. My phone rang with the grim details, a full product recall and a significant financial hit. Across town, in a lavish executive suite, Grace Sterling watched the news reports with a calm, almost serene satisfaction. She raised a glass of champagne, a silent toast to her successful maneuver. Marcus Thorne, never one to miss an opportunity, held an impromptu press conference. His words, dripping with feigned concern, were a thinly veiled attack, a public declaration of my company's supposed failure. His smug words echoed in my empty office, each one a fresh sting. The public humiliation was brutal, a stark reminder of how quickly fortunes could turn and how deeply betrayal could cut. Sarah tried to reach out, her concern genuine, but I pushed her away. How could I explain that I knew this would happen but couldn't stop it without revealing my impossible secret? The isolation felt crushing. Even Daniel, with his unwavering loyalty, couldn't break through my self-imposed wall. I just nodded, feigning agreement, while my mind raced, replaying every interaction with Grace, piecing together the true depth of her deception. Her every helpful suggestion, every strategic move now clicked into place. Grace hadn't just sabotaged us, she had guided me to my own ruin, using my ambition against me. The realization was a bitter pill. City lights outside my window seemed to mock my shattered resolve. This wasn't just a business setback. It was a personal failure, a wound inflicted by someone I had almost begun to trust. The weight of it all was suffocating. Later that night, the news played on a loop, painting a bleak picture of Vance Innovations. My company, once hailed as a rising star, was now a cautionary tale of overreach and failure. It was exactly what Grace wanted. Just as despair threatened to consume me, my phone buzzed. An anonymous message, short and cryptic, appeared on the screen. Forces beyond your control are at play. You are not alone in this fight. The weight of the past week pressed down, a cold, heavy blanket. My office, usually a beacon of ambition, felt like a cage. Every choice, every calculation now tainted by a single catastrophic misstep. A soft knock broke the silence, pulling me from the abyss. Sarah and Daniel stood there, their faces etched with concern, reflecting the depth of our collective predicament. I knew I couldn't face this alone anymore. I made a mistake, I confessed, the words raw in my throat. A critical misjudgment in trusting external advice too readily. My usual pattern recognition failed to account for a hidden variable. Miles away, Olivia Hayes watched the news report, her brow furrowed. The official narrative painted a picture of a young CEO's overreach, but her journalist's instinct screamed otherwise. Incompetence, she murmured, a skeptical glint in her eyes, or a very deliberate push from someone who doesn't want Vance Innovations to succeed. The pieces weren't fitting, and she sensed a deeper game. Back in our office, the initial shock gave way to grim determination. Sarah projected the disastrous sales figures, Daniel scribbled notes, and I felt the familiar weight of responsibility returning, but this time shared. "We need to pivot," I stated, my voice firm. "But this time I need your eyes on everything. No more intuition clouding my judgment. Every angle, every risk, every opportunity laid bare." Sarah nodded, a flicker of renewed hope in her eyes, while Daniel immediately grabbed a marker, already brainstorming. Their trust, earned through my vulnerability, felt like a new kind of strength. Hours bled into night as we tore apart the problem, each idea building on the last. The initial despair faded, replaced by the focused hum of collective intellect. This was how we'd rebuild. Meanwhile, Olivia's investigation deepened. A seemingly innocuous press release from Thorne Corp a month before our setback now seemed to hide a subtle, manipulative clause. The pieces were starting to connect. Back with my team, we hit a wall. Every conventional solution led to a dead end. But as I listened, a faint echo from the future resonated, a subtle trend I'd initially dismissed, now gleaming as a radical possibility. "Forget conventional," I declared, a spark igniting in my eyes. "This setback isn't a disaster, it's a unique, unforeseen opportunity, but it requires a bold, unconventional move, something no one expects." City lights blurred outside Olivia Hayes' window, but her focus remained sharp on the glowing screen. The recent attacks on Vance Innovations felt too coordinated, too convenient to be random. Something deeper was at play. Back at Vance Innovations, the mood was different. We'd weathered the storm, and the team's combined efforts were starting to pay off. Daniel projected the latest public sentiment data, a gradual upward trend. Our new transparent tech campaign resonated. Online forums buzzed with positive comments, and news feeds highlighted our renewed commitment to user privacy. The public was slowly but surely coming back to us. Grace Sterling watched the same trends from her opulent office, a slight frown marring her perfect composure. Our recovery was faster than she anticipated. A quick call, a subtle instruction, and another small obstacle was put in our path. Olivia, meanwhile, dove deeper. The initial leads were faint, but a pattern emerged. Shell companies, obscure offshore accounts, it all pointed to a deliberate, shadowy network. And then a name kept reappearing: Aegis Holdings. Our internal metrics confirmed it. User retention was climbing, new sign-ups surged, and investor confidence was slowly returning. Sarah, usually reserved, even allowed herself a small, relieved smile. But not everything was smooth. A critical server component shipment was delayed, then rerouted. Sarah voiced her concerns. "It feels too coincidental, Ethan, like someone is trying to slow us down, not crush us outright." Then Olivia found it. A shell company, Aegis Holdings, with a director tied to Grace Sterling's venture capital firm. And buried deep in older records, Aegis had once been a minor investor in a Thorne Corp subsidiary years ago. The pieces clicked. I recalled Grace's casual suggestions, her subtle advice. It wasn't always bad, but looking back, every help seemed to subtly redirect us, always for her asterisk benefit. Daniel caught my eye, a shared understanding dawning. Olivia reviewed her findings one last time. The evidence was irrefutable. She picked up her phone, the name Ethan Vance glowing on the screen. It was time to make contact. My phone buzzed, a number I didn't recognize. Olivia Hayes. My mind raced. What could the journalist want? The timing felt significant. I answered, a sense of foreboding and anticipation twisting inside me. "Mr. Vance," her voice was calm, serious. "I believe you have powerful enemies, and I think I just found proof. I want to help you expose them." The documents I handed Olivia were carefully chosen, future knowledge distilled into irrefutable evidence. "Thorne's last play," I told her, "is a desperate one, and it's illegal." Olivia spent hours cross-referencing my data with her own findings. The pieces clicked into place, forming a damning picture of Thorne's stock manipulation scheme. Her resolve hardened. The news studio buzzed with a nervous energy, a palpable tension before a major broadcast. This wasn't just another segment, it was the eve of a corporate reckoning. Miles away, Grace Sterling received the alert. A flicker of annoyance crossed her perfect features as she realized the broadcast was coming sooner than expected. Thorne was a loose end she hadn't secured. In his opulent office, Marcus Thorne scoffed at the news alert. "Another sensationalist piece," he muttered, dismissing the impending broadcast as a nuisance. His arrogance was unwavering even now. The broadcast began. Olivia, calm and collected, launched into her exposé. The screen behind her displayed intricate graphs and financial data, a web of deceit unraveling for the world to see. Olivia meticulously detailed the shell companies, the insider trading, the deliberate market manipulation. Each piece of evidence was a nail in Thorne's coffin, delivered with unwavering journalistic integrity. Thorne watched aghast as his empire crumbled live on air. The confident smirk vanished, replaced by a desperate, panicked expression. His phone rang incessantly, but he couldn't tear his eyes away. Grace, seeing Thorne's unraveling, barked urgent commands into her phone. She tried to activate damage control to protect her organization's involvement, but it was too late. The dominoes were falling. Then the ultimate blow. Live footage cut to police storming Thorne Corp HQ. Olivia's voice, firm and clear, announced the arrest warrant. The table had turned completely and irrevocably. Marcus Thorne, his face ashen, was led away in handcuffs. The crowd of reporters, previously silent, erupted. His public disgrace was absolute, a final, crushing defeat for the man who underestimated me. I watched Thorne's downfall, a grim satisfaction settling in. Then Olivia called, her voice grave. "Anonymous tip," she said. "That shell company. It links Grace Sterling to something bigger, much bigger." The city lights shimmered, reflecting the triumph of Vance Innovations. Thorne's downfall was complete, a public spectacle that cemented our place in the industry. News channels buzzed with the story. Experts hailed our strategic brilliance, a David and Goliath victory against the old guard. A new era had begun. Inside our new, expanded office, Sarah and Daniel celebrated. Their smiles were genuine, a stark contrast to the growing unease I felt despite our victory. The moment Olivia Hayes walked in, the celebratory mood vanished. Her expression was grim, signaling that our battle with Thorne was merely the prelude. "Grace Sterling isn't just a venture capitalist, Ethan," Olivia stated, her voice low. "She's tied to something far bigger, a global network called the Zenith Syndicate." The words struck me like a physical blow. Zenith Syndicate. Fragmented memories from my 2030 life, subtle threats, strange occurrences began to coalesce. My collapse at the product launch, the accident that sent me here, it wasn't an accident. It was them. Grace Sterling, a puppet master, not a mentor. Olivia left, leaving me with a chilling clarity. The true game had just begun. I had to acknowledge her, let her know I saw her shadow. Miles away, Grace Sterling sat in her opulent office, a faint smile playing on her lips as she reviewed the news of Thorne's spectacular fall. My victory, her opportunity. Then a notification, a single encrypted message from an unknown sender. Its content was brief, but its meaning for her was devastatingly clear. The teacup clattered softly as she placed it down. Her smile vanished, replaced by a gaze of chilling, ruthless resolve. My hidden message had landed. The game had indeed rebooted. My past life, my future knowledge, and now the Syndicate. I stood ready. The real fight had just begun. A coded message was sent. Now I waited. The city lights below mirrored the digital storm I knew Grace Sterling was about to unleash. This wasn't just business anymore. Grace Sterling, a woman who had once offered me mentorship, now confirmed her true colors. My coded message had landed, and her response was swift, precise, and utterly ruthless. First strike came through the airwaves. Whispers, then outright accusations began to spread like wildfire, attempting to dismantle the trust I had painstakingly built for Vance Innovations. Panic rippled through the office. Sarah looked distraught, Daniel confused. They saw a crisis. I saw Grace's opening gambit. Her network was extensive. Before we could even address the public narrative, an alert flashed. A physical breach, a coordinated attempt to cripple our core infrastructure. This was the Zenith Syndicate's signature. My future memories, once a burden, were now a shield. I barked orders, guiding Sarah with precise instructions to counter the digital attack, knowing exactly where their weaknesses lay. The immediate threat was neutralized, but the ease and sophistication of their attack chilled me. This wasn't Marcus Thorne's clumsy brute force. This was a global, silent war. They shifted tactics, aiming for a more personal touch. A simple drive across town became a stage for a carefully orchestrated accident. I felt it before I saw it. My foresight screamed a warning. I swerved, a split-second decision based on a memory of a future headline. The metal shrieked as the massive beam crashed exactly where my car had been. Back in the relative safety of my office, a new encrypted message materialized on my private terminal. Grace wasn't just confirming her involvement. She was sending a chilling warning. "We know your anomaly." The words echoed the deepest, most terrifying secret of my existence. They knew, they understood what I was. This wasn't just about my company, it was about my very being. Zenith Syndicate wasn't just a competitor. They were an entity that understood the fabric of time itself. My rebirth, my foresight, they weren't just aware of it, they were coming for it. Server room hummed with a dangerous intensity, alarms flashing red across the main console. Sterling's attack was a full-scale assault, not just on our systems, but on our very foundation. My fingers flew across the keyboard, analyzing the incoming vectors. This wasn't a brute force attack. It was a sophisticated, multi-layered infiltration, demanding a counter-strategy from the future. "Adaptive encryption, phased firewall rerouting now," I commanded. Sarah, a blur of motion beside me, executed the complex sequence I dictated, her focus unwavering. Red warnings on the main console flickered, then slowly receded, replaced by a calming green. We had stemmed the tide for now, but the silence felt heavier than the storm. While Sarah and I fortified our external defenses, Daniel had been quietly working on internal network anomalies, a hunch gnawing at him since the first subtle attacks. Grace Sterling, observing our successful defense, simply smiled. A temporary setback. Her next move was already in motion, a precision strike to compromise our most sensitive internal data. Just as we thought the storm had passed, new alarms screamed. This time not external, but internal. Data exfiltration attempts. They were trying to steal our core research and employee records. The external attack was a smokescreen, I realized, my voice tight. They wanted us distracted. Daniel slammed his hand on his desk. I found it, a backdoor planted months ago, just activated. The backdoor led to an anonymous employee account. Daniel, his jaw set, traced its recent activities, narrowing down the culprit within our own walls. A mole. Daniel found him in the break room, trying to wipe a burner phone. What are you doing? Daniel's voice, usually friendly, was laced with cold accusation. The mole lunged, a desperate struggle ensuing. He managed to shove Daniel aside, dropping his phone, but not before a tiny data chip flew out, unnoticed in the chaos. The mole vanished into the night, but the data fragment, no bigger than a fingernail, held a cryptic sequence. It wasn't just about our company. This was a network deeply embedded, far beyond what we imagined. The mole's escape left a bitter taste, but the cryptic data fragment he dropped was a lead. We gathered, the air thick with the realization that Sterling's reach was far more insidious than we'd imagined. Sarah, ever the meticulous one, dove into the fragment. It was a jumble of encrypted packets, but she saw patterns where I saw only noise, a digital breadcrumb trail leading somewhere dark. Daniel, leveraging his network, began tracing the mole's last known movements. His street smarts were invaluable, navigating the city's underbelly for any whisper of unusual activity. I pieced together the fragments, seeing the ghost of future patterns. Sterling wasn't just an individual, she was a node, a conduit for something far larger, far more organized. Miles away, Olivia Hayes, driven by her own journalistic instincts, began pulling at the threads of Sterling's public profile, sensing the discrepancies that screamed manipulation. And Sarah found it, a series of shell corporations, almost invisible, funneling money through obscure channels. The mole's fragment contained a subtle, encrypted link to one of them. The address linked to Aurora Holdings led Daniel to an abandoned industrial district. It was a perfect cover for a clandestine operation, a hidden node in Sterling's local web. Daniel returned with photos confirming our fears. It wasn't just a front. It was a sophisticated data center, a nerve center for Sterling's local operatives. Her influence was terrifyingly broad. At the same time, Olivia's deep dive into public records uncovered something even more disturbing. Sterling's ties to local power players and illicit organizations, a web far beyond mere corporate espionage. The full picture began to emerge. Sterling wasn't just a corporate rival. She was an operative of the Zenith Syndicate manipulating local power. My strategy needed to evolve. Public opinion would be our weapon. We started working, quietly planting seeds of doubt, preparing to expose Sterling's network. This wouldn't be a direct assault, but a strategic unraveling, piece by piece. Then as the city slept, my phone buzzed, an anonymous, heavily encrypted message. Inside, a partial, corrupted data file. My blood ran cold. It was a fragment from my 2030 life, a key to the Syndicate's weakness. The corrupted data fragment glowed ominously on the screen. It was a digital lock, secured with layers I hadn't seen in 2008, a true challenge even for Sarah's formidable skills. The war room felt alive, a nerve center of screens and humming servers. Every component was pushed to its limit, struggling to unravel the future's secrets. Hours blurred, then Sarah's fingers flew across the keyboard. A green line of code sliced through the red, a tiny victory. "Got it," she murmured, a decryption key hidden in the metadata. The screen flickered, then a torrent of fragmented data cascaded down. I saw keywords: Zenith, infrastructure, Nightfall. My stomach clenched, recognizing the future's dark shadow. The data streamed, a chaotic symphony of numbers and symbols. Sarah's algorithms fought to bring order, to make sense of the fragmented whispers from a future I already knew. Finally, the fragments coalesced. Sarah pointed, her voice tight. "It's a blueprint. They're planning to control global digital infrastructure by 2030 through a series of neutral acquisitions." Words hit me like a physical blow. Project Nightfall. It was worse than I remembered, a vast, insidious web. Sarah saw my face, but she couldn't see the future unfolding in my mind. "This is terrifying," Sarah said, her voice low. "But what do we do with it? Exposing this could destabilize everything." Her ethical compass, sharp as ever, was a stark counterpoint to my pragmatic dread. I knew the choice was mine. "We use it," I stated, my voice firm despite the tremor inside. "This is our leverage against Sterling, against the Syndicate. The future depends on it." Miles away, in an office of cold steel and glass, Grace Sterling received her own update. Her expression remained serene, but a subtle shift in her posture betrayed a flicker of concern. Her voice was a silk cord tightening around my future. "Tell Mr. Vance," she purred into her secure comms, "that some futures are best left undisturbed, especially those involving his dear friend Daniel and his family." Unaware of the chilling threat, Daniel laughed, sharing a meal with his parents. The warmth of his family, a stark contrast to the cold calculation of the Syndicate, now hung precariously in the balance. Sterling's threat echoed in my mind. Daniel's family, right here. There was no time for hesitation. Their safety was paramount, demanding immediate decisive action. I laid out the plan, a secure, off-grid location. Daniel's initial fear for his family quickly turned to a deep, worried gratitude, his eyes searching mine. The move was a logistical nightmare, stretching my nascent company's resources to their absolute limit. Every call, every coordinated detail felt like a drain. Sarah found me staring at the encrypted data. Using Project Nightfall meant weaponizing a future threat, risking countless innocent lives. The weight of that choice was immense. Hours later, a quiet relief washed over me. Daniel's family was safe, their new home a secluded haven in the wilderness. He deserved that peace. Confirmation arrived, Daniel's family was settled. But the report also detailed the strain on our finances and personnel. I felt the weight of every sacrifice. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, the encrypted Syndicate data glaring from the screen. This wasn't just about vengeance. It was about preventing a future catastrophe, but at what cost? Sarah's voice was firm, cutting through my internal debate. This isn't just your secret anymore, Ethan. Your knowledge is a shield, but also a weapon. We have to use it wisely for everyone. Her words resonated. We moved, strengthening our digital defenses, patching every vulnerability. My team worked tirelessly, their focus a testament to our shared resolve. For a brief moment, a fragile calm settled. Daniel and his family were secure. Our defenses were stronger. I allowed myself to believe just for a second that we had averted the immediate crisis. Then the screens in the office flared to life. Multiple news channels, all flashing the same breaking story. Sterling's counterattack. It was swift, brutal, and completely unexpected. The headlines screamed, "Vance Innovations data threat." Sterling had fabricated evidence, painting us as dangerous. Our assets were frozen. The battle had just begun. City screens blared, each headline a fresh dagger. My name, once synonymous with innovation, was now a byword for deceit, painted across every digital billboard for all to see. In the quiet of my office, the news report on my laptop felt like a personal accusation. The commentator's voice echoed the public's judgment. I was a fraud, a danger. Silence in the office was deafening. Desks once buzzing with activity stood empty, project boards marked with HALTED, a stark monument to what we had lost. I had foreseen market shifts, technological breakthroughs, even Thorne's schemes. But I hadn't predicted this. How could I fight an enemy who could weaponize public trust against me without revealing my secret? Sarah's face was pale, Daniel's usually cheerful demeanor replaced by a grim resolve. We were cornered, our hands tied, watching our future crumble because of lies we couldn't publicly refute. I traced the outline of a circuit board on a deserted project desk. Was this all a mistake? Had my arrogance in altering the timeline sealed my own fate, bringing only ruin to those I cared for? The emails flooded in, each one a death knell for our projects. Withdrawal of investment, termination of partnership. The financial world was closing in, suffocating everything we had built. Outside, the chants grew louder. A small but furious crowd, emboldened by the media storm, demanded justice. Their faces, twisted with anger, were a mirror of the public's absolute condemnation. Every legal document, every clause, seemed designed to ensnare me. My assets were frozen, my reputation shattered, and every avenue for defense was blocked. I was truly, completely cornered. Meanwhile, in a luxurious penthouse suite, Grace Sterling watched the news unfold. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips, a cold satisfaction in her eyes. Her plan was proceeding perfectly. My last hope lay with Mr. Davies, my most trusted legal counsel. We met in a sterile conference room, the silence between us heavy with the weight of my ruined empire. "There must be a way," I said, desperate. Mr. Davies met my gaze, a flicker of something I couldn't quite place in his eyes. "Ethan," he began, his voice barely a whisper, "I'm afraid. My hands are tied. The Syndicate reached out. They know everything." Headlines screamed my company's ruin, echoing the despair that had settled deep within me. With my legal advisor compromised and my assets frozen, I had nowhere left to turn. But this isolation would not break me. I knew what I had to do. Trust, a luxury I rarely afforded, was now my only weapon. I activated the secure network, sending out encrypted summons. The truth, however partial, had to be shared. Sarah and Daniel arrived first, their faces etched with concern, but their presence a quiet reassurance. Despite everything, they were here, ready to face the storm with me. And Olivia, her journalist's intuition a palpable force, appeared. She carried a skepticism I respected, a sharp mind that wouldn't accept easy answers. She was the wild card, the critical piece. Inside, a small, insulated room, stripped of all surveillance, awaited us. The air was thick with unspoken questions, but also a growing resolve. This was where the tide would turn. I began to speak, carefully choosing my words. I told them of temporal anomalies and predictive algorithms, avoiding the impossible truth of my rebirth. Sarah and Daniel exchanged glances, but Olivia's gaze remained unblinking, analytical. And I showed them. The decrypted data fragment, a digital breadcrumb trail leading directly to Grace Sterling and the insidious Zenith Syndicate. It was irrefutable proof of their manipulation, their unethical future operations laid bare. Sarah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Daniel's face hardened, a low growl escaping him. Olivia, though, was a whirlwind of controlled fury, her eyes alight with a journalist's hunger for truth, her skepticism dissolving into a fierce resolve. He started connecting the dots, not just the data I showed, but the inconsistencies she'd suspected all along. The puzzle pieces clicked into place, revealing a vast, insidious network. Her initial suspicion of me turned into a shared understanding of a common enemy. The room hummed with a renewed energy, a collective purpose. Sarah, Daniel, and Olivia, my unexpected allies, now saw the true threat. My isolation was broken. In its place, a united front had formed, ready to fight. Olivia, her voice steady, laid out her plan. We hit them where it hurts, a live, public exposé. We use their future data against them, but it means you, Ethan, risk everything. You step into the spotlight facing immense scrutiny. I looked at them, then at the tablet displaying Sterling's network. The risk was monumental, a plunge into the unknown. But this was the only way to reclaim my future and protect the ones I now trusted. This was the fight. The makeshift studio buzzed with a frantic energy. Every wire, every monitor, every piece of data represented our last stand against Sterling and the Syndicate. In the center of the chaos, I focused on the counterjamming device. It was a gamble, cobbled together from 2008 parts, designed to ensure our signal broke through any interference. Olivia, meanwhile, rehearsed her lines, her voice steady. She carried the weight of our truth, ready to deliver it to the world. Daniel double-checked the security feeds, while Sarah verified the data streams. We were a finely tuned machine, each part essential. Meanwhile, in her opulent penthouse, Grace Sterling received news of the impending broadcast. She merely chuckled, dismissing it as a desperate stunt. But beneath her calm facade, a subtle tension lingered. A quick, hushed call and her operatives were dispatched, ordered to monitor the situation. Back in our studio, the air crackled with anticipation. Every second brought us closer to the precipice. I ran one last diagnostic on the counterjammer. The weight of the moment pressed down. My foresight was a map, but the path was still mine to forge. This wasn't just about exposing Sterling, it was about protecting everything we'd built. Olivia took her seat at the anchor desk, the mic before her. The red light of the ON air sign loomed, counting down the final seconds. Outside, dark sedans pulled up silently. Men in dark suits emerged, moving with an ominous precision. Sterling's monitoring had arrived. Inside, the director gave the final countdown. 5, 4, 3. Olivia's hand hovered over the microphone, ready to begin. 2, 1. The studio doors burst inward with a deafening crash. Heavy footsteps pounded and masked figures stormed in, their intent clear. Seize the evidence, silence Olivia. The studio entrance exploded inward, splintering wood and showering sparks. Operatives in dark gear surged through, their eyes immediately scanning for critical equipment, but Daniel and Sarah met them head-on. From the control booth, I saw the chaos, but my focus remained on the glowing schematics of my counterjamming device. A red alert flashed. The first jamming signal, weak but growing, had just hit our network. In the main studio, Olivia adjusted her earpiece, her expression resolute. The director's voice crackled. 10 seconds to live. Jamming attempts increasing. Vance status. Daniel parried a punch, shoving an operative back into a rack of cables. Sarah swung a heavy camera tripod like a club, knocking another man off balance. They were outmatched, but they weren't backing down. Jamming signal intensified, a harsh buzz threatening to overwhelm our frequency. My fingers flew across the keyboard, adjusting algorithms, rerouting power. My 2030 knowledge was pushed to its absolute limit, adapting future solutions to 2008 tech. The director's voice, strained, cut through the comms. We're live. Olivia, unflinching, looked directly into the camera. Good evening. Tonight we expose the truth behind the attacks on Vance Innovations. A heavy thud echoed as Daniel was knocked against a wall, but he gritted his teeth, grabbing an operative's arm. Sarah, panting, kicked another attacker away from the server racks. Every second they held was precious. Olivia's voice grew stronger, a visual graphic appearing behind her. Grace Sterling, a respected figure, is directly implicated in a vast network of corporate espionage and sabotage, all orchestrated by the Zenith Syndicate. A surge of energy coursed through the counterjamming device. The buzzing faded, replaced by crisp, clear audio. I had done it. The signal, now pure, carried Olivia's words unimpeded to every screen. Across the city in her opulent penthouse, Grace Sterling watched the broadcast. Her perfectly composed facade crumbled, a single crack appearing in her porcelain mask as Olivia's words hit home. Her carefully built image was shattering. Olivia didn't hold back. We have irrefutable proof that Grace Sterling orchestrated the recent attacks on Vance Innovations, attempting to silence the truth. She is an agent of the Zenith Syndicate. The public backlash against me was finally turning. Sterling, her face pale with fury and desperation, grabbed the nearest phone. "You fool, Vance. You think this changes anything? The Syndicate is everywhere. Your first death was just a warning. You can't stop us." Her confession, meant for someone else, was broadcast live, her voice shaking, confirming my deepest suspicions about my past. The world erupted. News channels flickered across screens, each headline a hammer blow against Grace Sterling, her carefully constructed image shattering into a million pieces before the public's eyes. In the quiet of our temporary studio, I watched the chaotic broadcast. The vindication was a bitter taste. Knowing the cost, I felt no triumph, only the weight of what was to come. Sarah and Daniel, however, allowed themselves a moment of pure, unadulterated relief. Their shared glance spoke volumes, a testament to the storm we had weathered together. Meanwhile, Grace Sterling's opulent penthouse, a symbol of her power, descended into frantic chaos. Her staff scrambled, their loyalty evaporating with every new broadcast of her disgrace. Sirens wailed, growing louder. The city's finest, a grim procession of black and white, converged on Sterling Tower. The world watched, breathless, as justice arrived. Inside, the police entered Sterling's penthouse. Her initial defiance, a sneer plastered on her elegant face, quickly faltered as the reality of her situation closed in. The moment was brutal, unavoidable. Grace Sterling, once untouchable, was led out in handcuffs, the flashbulbs of 1,000 cameras blinding her as the crowd jeered. Media frenzy continued, dissecting Sterling's every move, every past utterance. Public opinion, once swayed by her charm, now condemned her as a villain. The table had truly turned. On every channel, Olivia Hayes delivered her follow-up report, detailing the Syndicate's reach and the depth of Sterling's betrayal. She spoke of Vance Innovations with renewed respect, clearing my name completely. Watching Olivia speak, a quiet satisfaction settled over me. The public had turned, my name was cleared, and Vance Innovations was vindicated. It was a victory, hard-won and deeply earned. Days later, in a sterile interrogation room, Sterling still clung to a sliver of her old arrogance. She refused to break, her eyes cold, her silence a shield against further exposure. Then a subtle shift. A smug, knowing smile played on her lips as she whispered, "You think this ends anything? The Syndicate always has a contingency, always." Months after the Sterling incident, Vance Innovations hummed with renewed purpose. Our new headquarters, a beacon of glass and steel, reflected our rapid ascent. The future I envisioned was finally taking shape. From my office, I watched Sarah and Daniel, now seasoned leaders, guiding their teams. Their dedication was palpable, a testament to what we had built together, far beyond just technology. Our weekly executive meeting was no longer a formality, but a vibrant exchange of ideas. Sarah, Daniel, and I, along with new department heads, charted our course with shared vision and unwavering trust. Framed photo on my desk, taken after our first successful product launch, reminded me of where we started. The lonely genius was gone. In his place stood a leader, surrounded by people I trusted completely. Daniel leaned against my office doorframe, a familiar, easy smile on his face. "Who would have thought, Ethan? From that dusty garage to this," he said, sweeping his hand to indicate the expansive office. Later, Sarah reviewed a new product prototype. "It's brilliant, Ethan," she said, her gaze steady. "But we need to ensure its ethical deployment. Power always comes with responsibility." Olivia Hayes' latest article, prominently featured in Global News, meticulously detailed the downfall of Thorne Corp and the exposure of the Zenith Syndicate's operatives. Her pursuit of truth had become our strongest ally. At a press conference, Olivia, now a respected voice for corporate accountability, spoke passionately. Her words resonated, a powerful vindication for all we had endured and a warning to those who operated in the shadows. Later, in the quiet of my office, a news report flashed across my screen. A seemingly minor dispute over rare earth minerals in a remote region. To others, it was background noise. To me, it was a chilling echo. My future memories stirred an unsettling clarity. This wasn't a random event. It was a precise, calculated move, a contingency by the Zenith Syndicate, orchestrated by someone far above Sterling's pay grade. My phone vibrated, a single, untraceable message. I opened it, and a symbol flashed on the screen. A stylized, interlocking serpent, one I'd only ever seen in the deepest, most hidden corners of my 2030 memories. The true battle, I realized, was just beginning. The Zenith Syndicate had revealed its true face, and this time the enemy was far more formidable, a shadow from my deepest, most dangerous past.